Our panel today is entitled Community and Wellbeing in Uncertain Times, where we explore how to support physical and mental well-being for people with disabilities and special needs. Each of our panel speakers has been instrumental in advocating for and supporting accessibility and inclusive recreation in Hong Kong. Walter is a passionate advocate dedicated to developing sustainable disabilities and inclusion strategies and promoting accessibility in both building and digital design. Born with visual impairment in both eyes, Walter has a thriving career in the corporate sector despite having less than 10% eyesight. He currently serves as executive manager at Care ER Association, the charity that he founded, which supports higher educated people with different types of disabilities and special needs to find career placement in corporate and educational settings. Everyone, Walter. Next, we have a much-loved member of the YAMA Foundation family, Mui Thomas. Born with a rare appearance-altering skin disorder, doctors said Mui would not survive infancy. But with resilience and determination, Mui became the world's first rugby referee and certified yoga instructor with Harlequin ichthyosis. And is that how I pronounce it? Sorry, Mui, is that correct? Ichthyosis, sorry, perfect, ichthyosis. And she is now one of the oldest survivors with this disorder. Many of you may have seen Mui in the media, as she focuses on raising awareness of visible differences and stands against the cyberbullying with her blog, The Girl Behind the Face. Ladies and gentlemen, Mui Thomas. Next, another familiar face. We're honored that she could join us today. Please welcome the TV personality turned celebrity yoga teacher, who also serves as a guest teacher for YAMA Foundation, Margaret Chung. Margaret. From switching careers to becoming a full-time mother of two, Margaret has endured many life's challenges and has channeled all of her triumphs into great causes. As a parent of her child with rare genetic disease and special needs, Margaret advocates for children with special needs in Hong Kong and founded the Beyond Children Special Needs Foundation, which focuses on making Hong Kong a better place for kids with special needs and their families. Everyone, Margaret. Last but not least, may I welcome onto the stage Shaman Chan. Carmen is a black belt member and community ambassador for the Hong Kong Physically Handicapped and Able-Bodied Martial Art Association. Since 2015, Carmen has been living with disability caused by a rare disease. Despite these challenges, Carmen is a skilled athlete in fencing, boki, martial arts, paragliding, and diving. She is passionate about staying active and committed to encouraging others to do the same. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, Carmen. Thank you to our panelist speakers for being here today, and a very, very warm welcome to all of you. The way that I'd like to run this panel with everybody, if you don't mind, is we're going to field some questions to the panelists. Feel free to elaborate on your answers as much as possible. After we've gone through the question session, we really want to open it out to the audience to really make this as interactive as possible. So please bear in mind your questions and answers, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of that. So if I can direct maybe the first question, potentially, I think we'll go for Walter and Margaret first. Maybe Walter, will start with you. As the world has been swept up by COVID, what does well-being mean to you, especially during these challenging times?
Yeah, thank you very much, and this is my honor to be invited to be the panel, sitting with a lot of other very prestigious guests. And actually, when I got these questions, and especially after I hear about Ashmal sharing, I feel a little bit ashamed and embarrassed talking about well-being, because actually I think I'm those young CEO type, exaggerating my career now in my own founded charity, and feel like very that's kind of stage that I'm froggy in my brain, froggy in my visions because my deteriorating eyesight, but I'm working so hard that I don't really take care of myself. So actually last night, when I'm preparing for today's panel sharing, I really look at what is well-being. I don't know what's well-being. Is well-being is about buying good things, shopping like crazy, like driving cars nicely, eating good. But actually, I eat goods to me is like burgers and beer, not supposed to be well-being. But actually, I think I'm treasure the time that I listen to Ashmal, what you're saying, just like meditation to me. Because actually, I don't really selfish to take care of myself, but hope I do later on. Because I really do come to the emergency service for the last few months because of the exhausting career work under the COVID-19 pandemic. But I really need to rethink about how I should taking care of myself better. But actually, I think after I watched a lot of YouTube videos and tech talks about well-being, I found out like three things. One thing is about what you gifted when you were born, congenital gift and blessed. From your families, from your genes, from your genetics, even though I'm a person with congenital eyesight problem, would deteriorate along the time until total blindness. But make me learn about how I define well-being is that even though my eyes are deteriorating along the time, I still find my way to do whatever I want, my passion, follow my heart. So one thing is previously I loved to ride a bicycle when I was a teenage, but I crashed a lot of things and people on the streets, and eventually I'm not clashing to other people, but almost I hit by a bus. So eventually I stopped. And now, fast forward to now, in the latest time, because I need to have a guide runner to exercise with me, but now under the pandemic, no one would like to run with me. So eventually I try to run myself very, very slowly. And I clash into bushes. I almost hit by a tree, but maybe I hit a tree actually. But after I make sure the tree is fine and the bushes are still alright, and I stopped doing so. So I started to actually run in the same feet of at my home for an hour. I did a time-lapse videos showing that I run for an hour doing the same thing at the 1 square feet. So I think the most important thing is follow your heart, trying to do whatever you can despite the limitation in life, because that you cannot change. The second thing is about it is not about what you have, what you got, what you pleasantly have or do not have. It's about counting every day is blessed. And I think one thing is I find like I have a families, I have a very good relationship with my mom, my wife. That's I always treasure that a lot. So the third thing is purpose of life. That's the video telling me. But I think it's one blessed thing is I have my jobs that I love. I can help the higher educated people with disabilities to get jobs, even those in this very difficult job markets, which I can imagine the unemployment rate is raised more than 20% for people with disabilities nowadays. But I can contribute hard on my part in my team to support on getting jobs for young graduates with disabilities and special needs. But I just learned from Ashmal that I need to take care of myself more a little bit, but later on I will share that more. But thank you very much for that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Margaret, maybe I can pose the same question to you. You know, as the world has been swept up by COVID, what does well-being mean to you, especially during these challenging times?
Again, I'm honored to be here. I think that Ajmal and Walter kind of covered the whole spectrum of really what well-being is. But like another part of me, for me being a mother and to a child that has special needs, sometimes the well-being becomes a bit tricky, right? Because are you going to take care of your child's well-being? Are you going to take care of your own, especially if your child has limitations physically and intellectually? So I think for carers and parents that have children or possibly adults or siblings or family with special needs, it's a little bit more challenging, right? So I think one thing that I really resonated with Ajmal is that you need to be selfish, but in a good way, right? So don't think that when you take that time out to do that yoga class, I love yoga, so yoga class, don't feel guilty about it. You know, if you want to, you know, I'm sure as mothers we buy organic for our kids. It's okay to spend that extra $100 to buy organic for yourself, right? So little things like that I think is really important for especially for me as a mom, because we get swept up into protecting our children, especially during now with the COVID, protecting them, buying the proper face masks for them, doing all these things for them, but they actually figure out, oh, actually I don't have a mask for myself. You know, I don't have a proper one for myself. So it takes that extra effort to come into this realization that the well-being of your child is totally up to the well-being of yourself, right? Because we are their advocates. We speak on behalf of them. A lot of things are reliant on us. So I find that, you know, take that extra time to go out. Like for me, I'm very blessed to have a great community in Hong Kong. I have a great channel for myself to de-stress, right? But for people that possibly haven't tried yoga or haven't found their way to channelize their balance, right? I think go ahead and find it, right? Go experiment, right? Go try different things, you know? Even just having that simple coffee with face masks and hand sanitizers, with everything, all the limitations that we have, go enjoy yourself for a few hours of the day. And I think that's really important. You know, it's really easy to say, do yoga, eat healthy, be happy, but to actually constructively do that, it's actually quite hard, right? Especially during the times now. So I do advocate for a lot of parents and carers to be a little bit selfish in a good way, yeah, like Ashma says, but do something for yourself, you know, and that's what sometimes, you know, during these challenging times, through the foundation that we have, is just giving them different channels, you know, and also seeing how we can help some of the responsibilities they might have for the children, right? So if there's any financial support they need, if there's any emotional support we need, you know, reach out to all these great organizations and foundations to see if they can help you with that, because it's not a failure to reach out for help, you know. Everybody needs help, right? And sometimes just taking that moment to receive it and know that you're worth being taken care of mentally is very important. And I think after that mentality, little things will kind of fall into place. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Margaret. So coming to a couple of our sports experts on the stage, and maybe Carmen, I'll start with you first. How do you keep your body and mind in a good space during these times and in general?
真係去享受自己而家擁有嘅每一樣嘢啦，咁同埋真係去享受自己鍾意做緊嘅嘢，因為真正去享受咩叫身心嘅時候，其實係真係喺我失去咗好多嘢嘅時候，先至真正去感受得到。因為當好似彷彿乜嘢都擁有嘅時候，其實可能我哋活於喺個忙碌嘅空間裏面。但係正正因為身體嘅情況開始視力啊、聽力、身體機能都衰退嘅時候，就開始真正去諗呢一個問題。因為我覺得呢啲嘢唔會突然之間冇咗，亦都唔會突然之間 會失去，所以我覺得到我有時間先去感受下自己嘅身體，感受下自己心靈嘅世界。但係當失去咗嘅時候，就會知道原來呢一啲嘢係喺自己生命裏面係好緊要，而呢一啲嘢唔係話我哋想要就有，想存在就有。所以當失去咗嘅時候，我會反而更加珍惜而家剩翻嘅嘢。因為正正就係失去咗好多嘢嘅時候，自己嘅心裏面就打開咗更多。而當我哋真係用個心去感受呢個環境、呢個空間、對方嘅感受嘅時候，其實所睇嘅嘢原來係可以好另一面，或者係好美好嘅事。所以雖然失去咗唔同嘅嘢，但係去打開咗我哋嘅心裏面呢一隻眼嘅時候，其實我哋更要學會嘅係感恩。而因為擁有咗呢一份心嘅時候，嗰個身心其實就會真係冇以前咁多嘢沉澱咗喺入邊。其實，所以當我哋嘗試去見到好多唔同嘅困難或者好多唔同嘅事，都好嘗試用另一個角度，就係我哋嘅心去感受下，可能你嘅得着會更加大。Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you very much for that. Mui, if I can move over to you and ask you the same question. How do you keep your body and mind in a good space?
Thanks so much for having me today. Sorry, I'm going to play with this a bit. So the biggest thing about this whole COVID situation was everything stopping, because what I do on a daily basis relies on being with people. And so for me, it was all about having to change the way I do things, the way I think. But I think with the mind space, actually for the first 6 months, I was very on edge. I was very sort of, what the hell's going on? When in fact, I was in the same situation as everybody else. And it was only about the last couple of months, actually, maybe last 1 or 2 months, that I kind of realized, okay, we're in a situation where nobody knows what's going on, and we now owe it to ourselves to make do with what we have. Because I think you guys all in Hong Kong will all probably appreciate that, let's be honest, we've done pretty well. So we haven't been as limited as some other places, I think. And so with, yoga has unfortunately been very limited, which I love a lot now. Rugby has been very limited. And so for me, the biggest thing was, what else can I do? So I decided to hit the trails. I hit the trails now every now and then. And that was me adapting while still feeling very isolated from everything that I was known to do. So yeah, for me, when you're doing team sports, the biggest thing about this whole pandemic was isolation. And thankfully, the groups that I'm involved with, everybody was very proactive. So everyone kept in touch. Everyone was on Zooms, WhatsApps, to the point I don't really like Zoom anymore. Zoom can, go somewhere else. But I think what got me through this whole wellness and this whole situation was the community. It was the whole, everyone checking in on each other. Because everybody knows that they're all, nobody knows where the end point is. Everyone just rallies around together. And I think, for me, for the rugby, luckily we're starting again today, actually. So that's a really big booster. And then hopefully with other things get better. And yeah, community is really big for me. And I think that was huge for getting through this whole thing as a sports person.
Thanks, Mui. Thank you very much. Okay, if I move to the next question now, really, and maybe if I can aim this at Margaret first. What are your views on accessible well-being and inclusive recreation in Hong Kong? And does Hong Kong have good facilities and programs available?
This is a positive panel, right?
Share what you want to share. That's what I say, so we can all learn to make it better.
I think in regards to Hong Kong, as in any other city in the world, there's always room for improvement. Just in my spectrum of serving kids with special needs and family members, there's a huge lack of support, I find. You need to look, not that there isn't, but it's very limited. So I find that sometimes for accessible well-being in Hong Kong, you really need to search long and hard, especially in, what is your limits of, disability, what is that you need, what you're looking for. It seems like it's like a big sandpit. You've got to just kind of dig up what you need, and first you've got to find something. If that's right for you, it's not right, then you've got to dig again. So I think it's a constant search in Hong Kong. As a mom, just becoming more personalized in my own story, it's a lot of hard work to find accessible well-being in Hong Kong. It is. Accessible well-being support, and it's everything in general. It's been a challenge. But when you do find things, you find that there have these really small, little, beautiful communities and buckets of things that are in Hong Kong, and sometimes, the effort definitely is worth it to look for and find, but it's a lot of hard work, and when you find, you do it a lot. Yeah, like there's the accessible playground in Tuen Mun that just opened recently. Yeah. And that's a beautiful playground for all kids and big kids, to go and play. So we now that it's opening up more, we're aiming to bring my own daughter there a little bit more, things like that. So there are gems in Hong Kong, but you've just got to dig for them. Yeah.
Thanks. It definitely needs to be shared more. Thanks, Margaret. Carmen, can I ask you the same question? How, what are your views on accessible well-being and inclusive recreation in Hong Kong? And does Hong Kong have good facilities and programs available?
香港其實有嘅，但係仍然好多進步嘅空間同埋改善嘅空間嘅。因為對於我哋嚟講就係因為好似我自己雖然都係一個殘疾人士啦，咁同埋本身自己一路服務嘅對象都係一啲有特殊小朋友，都係需要坐輪椅。咁其實有時大家互相去嘅地方，其實可能我哋都未必入得到，或者一啲娛樂我哋未必真係享受得到。咁例如就係好似我哋好多唔同嘅活動啦。咁例如我係玩一啲輪椅嘅武術，因為我都有講過嘅就係，如果我哋自己都唔帶入去俾佢哋，其實佢哋都冇機會去享受呢一個活動。因為好多人就第一句可能就會覺得就你身體唔好玩啦，或者危險你就唔好去試啦。但係點解唔可以去嘗試下，俾個機會佢哋去接觸一下先呢？因為對於一啲嚴重嘅殘疾小朋友嚟講，其實可能佢哋7日都喺一間學校裏面，其實冇機會去對外界有任何嘅接觸，而任何嘅活動或者興趣就係由我哋唔同嘅人士帶入去俾佢哋進行。跟住好多人就會問武術其實都要用到隻腳嘅喎，但係你點樣去玩啊？就係我哋每一個人願唔願意將呢一樣嘅運動或者一個事情去將個模式改變，因為當我哋願意一齊去協調或者改變嘅時候，任何人其實都可以去參與去融入。就好似一班有特殊需要嘅小朋友，原來俾佢哋試完嘅時候，其實佢哋好開心，原來佢哋連接觸都未接觸過，原來佢哋係甚至乎我哋話俾佢哋知，佢哋未必係明白，但係原來佢哋連接觸嘅機會都冇嘅時候，其實我覺得即係唔應該啊，因為運動娛樂每一個人應該得到一個公平嘅享受或者一個權利。也許我哋帶咗入去，未必真係可能做翻一樣嘅嘢，但係原來佢哋個過程你能夠見到佢哋嘅笑容或者佢哋開心，其實呢一樣嘢係咪更加值得呢？因為其實呢一班小朋友就係 我哋見到佢哋嘅笑容，見到佢哋開心，其實我哋每一個教到佢哋或者接觸到佢朋友仔，其實就係最大嘅享受，最大嘅得着。所以無論其實幾辛苦或者幾困難都好，都希望將能夠自己所學嘅嘢送俾佢哋每一個。無論嗰個地方幾辛苦或者幾困難都好，我都希望將我哋本身能夠學得到嘅嘢，希望融入到俾佢哋每一個。因為等同於就係一個台，如果淨係得樓梯，我哋輪椅人士就上唔到。但係原來你加多個斜路嘅設施，我哋就上得到。成件事其實就係願意去改變所有嘢，就可以一齊去享受共同呢件事。Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you, Carmen. Yeah, I resonate with a lot of what you just said because I'm a martial artist as well. And Talia, who you saw before, I used to try and teach her a bit of Wing Chun. And out of her 3 sisters, she probably remembers the bits that I taught her the most. So that's quite funny and resonates very loud and clear with me. If I can turn the next question really to Walter first. Walter, how difficult is it for people with disabilities and special needs to get involved in inclusive recreation, and what recommendations can you make? I know Carmen touched a little bit on this, but maybe you can elaborate.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think nowadays in Hong Kong, I would say is part of the hardware facilities is good, but part of it is not as good and have a lot of improvement space. But I think we all need to appreciate things around us, because actually it's, when we travel around in Asia Pacific and even those in Europe and the West, we realize actually Hong Kong, in terms of some of the public infrastructure in the hardwares, we have got a lot of like good regulations and facilities. And you know, we all experience when we shop quite a lot in Tokyo and Osaka, and then you bring up the really heavy suitcase on the stairs, and then you feel like forever, and then you never end. But actually in Hong Kong, every single station would have at least one lift to help people without disabilities. And I think in Hong Kong is one thing is very important, is the people understanding. But you would realize, I think, Carmen, you would relay the situation when you queue up in a long queue in the MTR station. Actually, people inside the lift is playing about their mobile phones and have legs and arms, and never actually go out to spare the space for people really in needs. So I think one thing is the public education is very, very important. I think that is one single very interesting examples that I put. But I think in Hong Kong, when we're talking about recreation for people with disabilities, especially under the COVID-19 pandemic, we all move into virtual world, and the like Zoom, YouTube, and so on. And I'm sure actually, Margaret, you have done a lot of like YouTube videos live, teaching people how to stretch and doing yoga at home. But I think one thing is very important is digital accessibility and inclusion. When I think in the last 9 months, I couldn't get the same information that you do on your mobile phone, websites, and so on, because you know, LCSD and different government websites and public facilities websites really complicated and may not be able to. I think they comply with the basic accessibility as standard, but actually not user friendly, I would say. And I have multiple times I run to the gym, but actually that's closed already. Sometimes I just run to the stadium, but still closed in the middle, but open somewhere. But that's is something information that's available online, but we may not be able to take it. At the same time, actually, when that is not a good example. Shopping is not a recreation activities, but I go online. But I go online, actually not shopping something, but just buying face mask, surgical mask. It's not accessible. We never be able to queue up on time, on the right place online to get the things that we need. So I think now we need to focus more on not just only the building design physical environment accessibilities, but about digital inclusion as well. So something I really want to raise the awareness.
Thank you, Walter. Mui, can I ask you to add to that? You know, how difficult is it for people with disabilities and special needs to get involved in inclusive recreation, and what recommendations can you make?
To paraphrase my parents, would be shut up and get on with it. My parents, ever since I was a little girl, they were always like, one of their biggest mantras was give it a go. And, you know, if people, and 9 times out of 10, you'll find that people are willing to accept you. I mean, for me, for example, with the rugby thing, I thought, you know, hey, I want to play rugby. I want to get tackled. I want to get, you know, bruised and everything. But unfortunately, my parents were like, okay, you've got brittle bones, which I did have way back when. Side note, they were of a 110-year-old. But anyway, now they're much better. But it was more like, oh, how are you going to do rugby? Or how are you going to do yoga? And the biggest thing was give it a go. And if people can't accept you because they think, oh, they're going to break you or you don't belong there, that's their problem. And so for me, my biggest thing was just going out and doing stuff, and hence why I found that being involved in these 2 universes that I'm involved in is very accessible for me. I mean, not necessarily for, you know, other people. Like, what is accessible to me might not be accessible to Carmen, might not be accessible to Walter. And maybe I'm being selfish by saying I've been very lucky. But yeah, for me, the biggest thing was go ahead and do it, and then you'll find that there's a whole world out there. Because for me, it was the nerves. It was, would people accept me? That was the biggest thing for me. Would people accept who I am? And, you know, touch wood, people have, you know. There's no wood here, but it's all good.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mui. Thank you very much. Okay, so, you know, with that, I know we're a bit getting pressed for time. I'm just going to ask the panel one more question. Maybe we'll keep the answers quite short if possible, and then we'll move it over to Q&A. You know, can any of you just highlight some of the valuable work that you're doing in respect of your professions and your organizations, and just offer some advice on how others might benefit from these services? Maybe if we start, Margaret, you have you're holding the mic. Please start.
Yes, I am. I think for you know, on behalf of like not just Beyond Foundation, for a lot of organizations that are serving, you know, communities that have disabilities and special needs, it's, you know, we have such great advocates here. We have such great proactive people here. So we're out there. Our faces are in your face. But what we need to really work on, I find, is that a more of an inclusive mindset, as opposed to, okay, the government will do this, you know, our organization, foundations will do this, but then it's not really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not as what's the word? Not as beneficial, I guess, if the people around us are kind of resisting. Yeah, so what it is besides we doing what we do, we need to also advocate. I wouldn't even say educate, because it's not to educate you. It's just to remind you that, number one, people with disabilities and special needs are the community. We are part of the community. You know, we shouldn't be included. We are fused into the community, right? So I really find that just to take that moment, maybe click on YAMA Foundation, click on all our foundations to take a look at what we do and realize that, actually, if you just turn your perspective 20 degrees, you might see a whole different world there, which has always been there. And to just take a few minutes to learn about it a little bit. You know, I'm not requiring you to read a whole encyclopedia about what we do, but more of just kind of like get an insight of what we do and have that open heart, you know, for learning a little bit, and a bit more empathy and kindness will be amazing in Hong Kong.
Perfect. Thank you, Margaret. Carmen, can I ask you to share your views on the same thing? to the really valuable work that you're doing in your profession and your organisation, and some advice of how others can actually be part of this.
未必點講呢？可能未必一個人嘅力量可以改變到好多。也許同100個人講，亦都未必100個人明白。但我會成日都講，就係只要入邊有一個人明白，已經好好。因為當我哋所想表達或者想講嘅嘢，只要入邊有一個人明白，一個傳一個，係時間會耐啲，但係我至少起碼能夠做到一個一層一層慢慢去做嘅層面啊，可能唔識形容啊。因為一定唔會，即係點講呢？因為雖然一個人去傳落去個速度冇我同100個人一齊去做一件事咁快，但我覺得用心去做一件事，用心去深層去處理一件事，嗰樣嘢會比較更重要咯。因為最想講嘅其實就係我哋嘅心態去改變晒所有嘅，改變更大嘅嘢。因為等同於我哋同一啲唔同嘅有特殊嘅小朋友，我哋並唔係用言語去溝通，或者唔係用言語去表達所有嘢，我哋就係偏偏用個心去表達所有嘅嘢。係佢哋教識我用個心去話俾大家知，好多嘢唔係必然或者一定成功，但係如果我哋用個心對每一件事嘅時候，當別人有一日去明白嘅時候，佢哋就會去幫我哋一齊去做呢件事，或者去處理呢件事。而我哋更明白就處理好多嘅事情嘅時候，其實我哋用嘅時間應該係會頗長。講緊嘅唔係1日2日，可能講緊係1年、2年、3年嘅時間。但係就係想話俾大家知，只要我哋喺等待嘅過程裏面，去到繼續努力堅持，而唔係中途放棄。到你真係成功咗嘅時候，你會回想翻你之前嘅等待，你並不是一個白白嘅等待咯。所以要改變一件事，我哋每一個人嘗試真係用個心，用唔同嘅角度，同埋去學習等待，呢一切結合嘅時候，我哋相信會有一日去做得到或者成功。Thank you.
Walter, we'll pass the mic to you.
So I just want to, because I understand, because my work is helping people with disabilities to find jobs, and then I realize that is a very tough time for everyone. But I always saying to all of you, be faithful, because actually I just want to spend this chance to thank my team, because they work like crazy to create jobs and find jobs for our members, and I'm sure actually other NGOs and other social workers and other career support centers doing the same thing as well. So in the last 9 months, and from the news, even those people without disabilities is tough, but I think now we still find out a lot of job opportunities, career development opportunities, but it takes a little bit more time, because actually long-term permanent jobs is less, because the business is tough too, because they never can plan for a long-term plans, because you cannot imagine just Chinese New Year this year. We're still off mask, but we now so used to wearing mask. But now I think all is tough. But another thing is all is faithful about this, and even those we trust the digital era, we trust the abilities of online technology, and we realize actually for my colleagues, and thanks to the team and a lot of other NGOs as well, putting things online is not easy. They telling me just like playing video games all the time at work, because actually one times actually we have like a career fair, 16 companies, actually 4 big conference room virtual, and then we have over like 40 to 50 split rooms on Zoom to create interview rooms. That's tough, but that's the way it is, and we all trust the ability on people with disabilities and special needs. That's we working hard. So stay faithful and thankful to all the people surrounding you and us. And actually, all of us are working very hard, not just people on stage today, but all of you in on a cloud as well. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you to our panel, but before we thank you formally, we'd like to open the floor out to questions. You know, feel free, if you do have a question, you know, you stand up or state your organization if you can, share with us a little bit, and feel free to ask any questions, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we'll start.
Hi, my name is Lakshmi, and I would just like to know how, this is directed to all the panel members, how do you test for accessibility in your own personal view? How do you go about testing how effective accessibility is? Thank you.
Thank you. I think you all heard that clearly, so I won't repeat it. So, anyone want to take the question? We don't have time for probably everyone to answer, but maybe one person or two people can answer that.
Oh, give me
So Mui and Walter. Okay, fine.
I think, like, in terms of testing for accessibility, I think, because I've had that opportunity where I had to make sure that while I was teaching somebody on Zoom, could he actually see, number one? Number two, was he actually in a position to even do what I wanted him to do? So for me, it was a lot of talking, and as you know, talking is very easy for me. So yeah, for me, just accessibility was all about talking. It was just opening it up and then just making it work for him. Not necessarily for me, because, you know, I'm not in the equation in this situation. It was for my clients, and I think that was the biggest thing, talking and asking questions. Yeah.
Let me add on as well. I think one thing is I want to start with empathy, because actually you need to step into other people's shoes, not just actually imagining people who cannot hear, seeing, and cannot walk, but actually step into other people's shoes, feelings, because actually for hearing impaired, they might use sign language or not. They may use lip reading. People who are visually impaired, they may not use Braille like myself. I don't know any Braille, but I use audio a lot. For example, I rely on audio description and explanation. And then, of course, everyone can go online to have a look on building department, and then they have like accessibility standard. And also for web and applications accessibility, you can browse online about the World Wide Web. Like they have a W3C's 2A standard, but the most important thing is empathy. Don't assume and don't have any prejudgment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you to all the panelists. My name is Shalini, and I'm on the board of YAMA Foundation. The question's for Margaret. How do we move parents from this is just this is a physical body that needs to be nurtured, to this is a person that needs to be nurtured with mental well-being as well? And obviously, because my interest is in YAMA, what is the role that yoga, arts, and meditation can play to enhance your child's mental well-being? Thanks.
I think as a parent, it takes time. So let's say when child gets diagnosed, it takes a bit of time for you to make sure your child is able to live, right? So this is my own experience. So when my daughter was diagnosed, the first thing that popped in my mind was, is she seeing the right specialists? Is she getting the right support and therapy? So I think in time, it's just, for me, it's just having the tools in the toolbox that I never used, and then having them to use after the fact, right? So for me personally, it took me about a good 2 years after my daughter was born to be able to say, to realize that I need to enjoy my daughter. I need to see how she's doing mentally. You know, I've been teaching yoga for over a decade, and this should be the first thing, you know, well-being. But I think as a parent acutely, when a child is diagnosed, you just want them to be physically healthy first, and once, for Isabella, she has a really rare genetic disorder. So we know that her limitations at the moment are here, and we'll let it progress. But once we realize that she's about here, then we have to make sure that experience is wonderful for her. Yeah. So for yoga, it's a huge part of our life. It's actually doing that training with Sonia Samar, with her, she's part of it too, is when you do yoga or yoga therapy as opposed to physical therapy, you really need to, number one first is to make sure the child is enjoying him or herself. So a lot of times I'm not like saying PTs are mean, they're not, I love them, right? But if the child is bawling their eyes out, they're still working on them, right? So for yoga therapy, a lot of times it's making sure that child is calm, not bawling their eyes out, and we kind of let them lead, and a lot of times yoga therapy is seeing what the child is able to do and let it manifest from there, as opposed to a conventional therapy, which is very beneficial too, to see what they can't do and work on that, right? So there's quite a distinctive difference in both therapies, and that's why I 100% advocate for children to, get the foundation of PT, ST, OT, etc., but don't be closed up to alternative, beneficial martial art therapy, right? Yoga therapy. Another thing is because, when you go to different kind of therapies, you realize your child is unlimited, and so I think that's part of in regards to yoga. But another part is that in regards to seeing your child as your child and not someone to care for. I think it takes a bit of time, but you need to surround yourself with the openness to accept, So when you're ready as a mom, emotionally, you're able to open the doors to enjoying your family, But yeah, it's a difficult road, but it's a road that, I absolutely love and has made me grown to become a better person, right? So so that's it in a bucket.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you very much. So, guys, we are rapidly running out of time. So I will encourage everyone to make sure that after today's session, you definitely hang around with everybody and really just spend time to share ideas and ask further questions and change cards so we can all network a little bit more. But what I really would love to do is thank our panelists today. Thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom. Sometimes sharing is not so easy in a slightly more intimate but even public environment. But really thank you all for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. Thank you.